Let's talk muscle. And specifically, let's zero in on grip strength today. And I want to show you research that suggests that grip strength should be a vital sign in your doctor's office. And you'll see that the research has shown strong inverse associations between your grip strength and your risk of disability and death from all causes. And so I put on here, could a pull-up bar literally prevent heart disease? And that might sound silly, but once you see the research today, you'll understand that it's not silly at all. It's actually a consideration. And we can also use the pull-up bar or a tree branch or anything you can hang from to test your own grip strength and see where do you stand today in terms of grip strength and cardiovascular risk, all-cause mortality risk, disability risk. So let's jump in. Now, why does grip strength matter? Grip strength matters because humans are built to carry things, built to hold things and lift things. If we think about it from a humanity, if we zoom out and look at humanity over history, before 1900, when things started to get easier with our scientific developments and technological developments, humans we had a lot on our hands, so to speak. We had to carry our children. We had to carry our food, whether we were gathering the food or whether we hunted it and needed to carry it back to the tribe or the campfire or the farm. We have to be able to carry. And if you're not strong, you can't carry. And so grip strength is a proxy of overall strength and muscle mass for us. And, if you think about it historically, the people who could carry the least were at the greatest risk of death because they could contribute the least to the tribe, and B, they might not be able to, pull themselves up into a tree or up over a rock or a ledge to avoid, an animal chasing them or avoid falling to their death. So hand strength, grip strength is very important for carrying things, for opening things. It's really what makes us human and separates us from the other non-opposable thumb mammals and animals. We can measure grip strength, and this is a picture of what's called a hand dynamometer. And we can do this in the office where basically you grab onto this thing and you squeeze it as hard as you can, and the needle on the dial there will spin and go to the highest number you created when you squeezed the handle. And so this one will measure up to 200 pounds, which is more than enough for most people. And the research, as you'll see today, there's lots of research that has been done on grip strength, so much so that they've narrowed it down to reference values or normative values for different countries. So here's how the grip strength, here's what a healthy grip strength should be for a 40 to 49-year-old female in South America compared to a 40 to 49-year-old female in North America and Asia, etc. So we have strong data on these, on what your grip strength should be and how it correlates to long-term health. But there's other ways to measure it too. So you might not be near a medical office that has a hand dynamometer. Well, there's other grip strength tests. One of them is a dead hang from a pull-up bar. So as you saw up here, the pull-up bar, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a pull-up bar. It could be a tree branch about that width, something straight that you can hang from, but a pull-up bar is easy. And so for men, a 40 to 49-year-old male should be able to hold on to a pull-up bar in a dead hang without letting go for 2 minutes. And that would be expected, and that would signify good grip strength and be protective for all-cause mortality. A 40 to 49-year-old female, the standard is 1 minute dead hang. So if you have a gym membership, in your workout tomorrow, go in there and test your grip strength through the pull-up dead hang test. And if you're female, 40 to 49, shoot for that 1 minute mark. If you're a male, shoot for that 2 minute mark. And then each decade older that we get, the time decreases a little bit. But shoot for 2 minutes as a male, 1 minute as a female, regardless of your age, because if you're 60 to 69 and can do that length of time, then you're above average for your age and you're more protected. So no one's going to be mad about being healthier than the standard. Other ways you could train that grip would be, say you squeeze the hand dynamometer in your medical office and you're weak. Well, that's going to increase your risk of death from all causes significantly. It's going to increase your risk of disability and injury significantly. So you might say, oh, I want to train it and decrease my risk because I care about health span and I care about longevity. Well, again, you could get a gym membership and work on the dead hangs. But if you're not a gym person, you could go get 2 gallons of water and carry those gallons down to the end of your driveway and back and see if you can do that without having to set them down, right? And then if you can do that, then you pick a further point from your door and walk there and back without setting them down. And the goal is to, build up so that you could walk around the whole block holding the gallon jugs, which are 8 pounds each. A gallon of water weighs 8 pounds, without setting it down. And that would be a good baseline grip strength for you. And when that's easy, maybe you buy some dumbbells that are, 12 pounds. So you just added 50% more weight to each hand and you work to walk around the block without setting it down. And in that way, that's called a farmer's carry. You're building your grip strength and you're simulating what our human ancestors would have had to do in terms of carrying things. And you're building grip strength, building overall endurance and muscle status to protect your long-term health. There's lots of science on this. Today, we're going to invest time in a recent 2023 study that was published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology. But if you really get into this and dive deep, it goes back years and years. So this is a nice study to look at because it's a review of many of the previous year's studies and combining it all for us. So we don't have to necessarily go read a bunch of studies. You can read this one and glean the information from the many others. So the title is Epidemiological, Mechanistic, and Practical Basis for Assessment of Cardiorespiratory Fitness and Muscle Status in Adults in Healthcare Settings. This paper is looking at cardiorespiratory fitness and muscle status. We're going to focus on just the muscle status portion in this video, but cardiorespiratory fitness is another test that these authors think should be a standard vital sign in medical offices. And how do you test cardiorespiratory fitness? That would be your VO2 max. And the reason it's not in every office is because it takes up space. You need a treadmill or a recumbent bike to do it, and fancy headgear to be able to measure your oxygen and carbon dioxide output. So that takes space, it takes money, it takes extra staff. So most offices don't do that, but that is the gold standard test of your cardiorespiratory fitness, and very, very important to understand if we can. But this call is about the muscle status. So if we look at an image from the study, you can see on the left-hand side, viewers left, that muscle status, the benefits of muscle status, is on the left and feeds into the middle. And then the benefits of a good VO2 max or good heart-lung fitness feeds into the center as well. So if we just focus on this left-hand side, muscle status, remember grip strength is a surrogate marker for muscle status. So the better muscle build you have, the improved energy expenditure you have, which decreases your risk of obesity, which decreases your risk of cardiovascular metabolic disease. The healthier muscle status you have, the less inflammation you have, the less insulin resistance you have, the better vascular health you have. So that's all these different color squares or ovals are just getting nerdy as to the effects, but you can see improved muscle status, decreased risk of heart disease, decreased metabolic disease, blood sugar disease, decreased death from all causes. So I say let's climb higher. Let's grab onto that ledge. Let's flex our grip strength by diving into the nitty-gritty from the study to really understand why the grip strength is so important. And here we are at the full text of the study. And if we jump down here, like I said, we're going to just focus on the muscle status part. But here, real quick, the authors say, recent knowledge now justifies the routine evaluation of cardiorespiratory fitness and muscle status in primary healthcare settings, starting in the fourth decade of life or in your 40s. And they should be vital signs. So if you're going to your doctor, just like they're checking your height and your weight and your blood pressure, they should also be checking your grip strength and your VO2 max, according to these authors. So let's dive into the muscle strength section. So if we look here, it says association between muscle status and morbidity and mortality. Remember that morbidity is disability, mortality is death. Okay, so obviously we're all going to die someday, but we want to delay that death for as long as possible. And while we're still alive and not dying, we want to have as little disability as possible or morbidity as possible. So, we don't want to just be alive but be disabled, because that's poor quality of life. We want to have, we want to thrive in the years we have. So no disability and live as long as we can. So you can see right here, the subheading says inverse association between muscle status and morbidity or disability. Studies conducted in adults have shown a negative association or an inverse association of hand grip strength and global or appendicular muscle mass. So appendicular muscle mass is muscles on, arms, legs, how your muscle mass. So there's an inverse relationship between grip strength, muscle mass, and risk of insulin resistance, poor blood sugar handling, metabolic syndrome, and diabetes. And remember, metabolic syndrome includes obesity, high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, increased waist size. Grip strength or global lean mass in the lowest quartile of the population is associated with up to 4 times higher risk of developing metabolic syndrome. So, what these studies do is they do population-wide studies and look at grip strength, and they break up all the people into quartiles or quarters. So if we took, men and women from North America, age 40 to 49, and test all their grip strengths, we divide that whole group of people, whatever number that is, call it 1,000 people, we divide it into quarters or 4 groups of 250 people. And so the people who fell in the lowest quarter, the 25%, the 0 to 25% in terms of grip strength, they have a 4 times higher risk of developing metabolic syndrome. So you don't want to have the weak grip, because your risk of metabolic syndrome is increased. And again, that's blood sugar, obesity, hypertension, big waist, etc. The spectrum of complications associated with lower grip strength or lower muscle mass includes increased risk of falls, fractures, disability, infections, respiratory disease, and hospitalizations. So again, if we have poor grip strength, that's a proxy for poor overall muscle status. And as we age, remember, as you age, falls are up there as a big time cause of disability and death in the elderly, because you fall, you fracture your hip, you go to the hospital, you pick up an infection, and you die early. So the more muscle mass you have, the better balance you have, the better strength you'll have, the better brain you have, the better ability to prevent falls. Qualitatively similar relationships have been reported between grip strength and cardiovascular outcomes. So the lower the strength, the greater the risk of heart attack, stroke, and heart failure. The negative association of grip strength and muscle mass with blood pressure and cardiometabolic risk factors, such as pulse rate velocity and sugar or cholesterol alterations, has been observed since early adulthood. So basically, a lot of these studies start with 40 and on, but these couple studies said, hey, we can see this connection in earlier life even. People with greater grip strength have better values of parameters for cardiometabolic importance, such as your BMI, your waist circumference, your blood pressure, your sugars, and your cholesterols. And all of these above associations are maintained even after you adjust for age, sex, body size variables, and physical activity. So grip strength is an independent risk factor for these things. Now looking at an inverse association between muscle status and mortality. So again, mortality is death. In longitudinal studies, greater grip strength or total muscle mass has been associated with a significant reduction in death from cardiovascular cause and from all cause in adults and elderly adults, both healthy and with blood sugar alterations in men and women. Subjects in the tertile of higher muscle density, so people with the highest muscle density, show up to a 70% lower risk of overall death than the worst tertile. So again, if we break people into groups, the group with the highest muscle density or highest grip strength has a 70% lower risk of death from any cause than people in the lowest group. So again, it pays for both quality of life and length of life to increase your grip strength and increase your overall muscle mass. In relation to more integrative evaluations of muscle performance, such as the sit-to-stand test in a chair. So basically you sit and stand in a chair repeatedly over a defined period of time to test muscle strength, or walking speed is another test. So in relation to those two tests, poor physical capacity is associated with higher death from all causes in both sexes. People in the quartile with the lowest walking speed have 3 times the risk of death as those with the fastest walking speed. Okay, so again, if you don't have a pull-up bar, you probably have a chair in your house. So you could do the sit-to-stand test, or, there's definitely an outside if you're inside. So you could go out and you could mark off a distance, and you could we could time you walking it and time a group of people walking it and compare you to normative values and say, hey, if you've got the slower walking speed, we need to improve your walking speed because that's going to decrease your risk of death from all causes. So the authors say the findings cited in this section apply to people between the 4th and 9th decades of life. So from 40s to 90s, without the diagnosis of sarcopenia, which is more fat than muscle, and health conditions taken from the general population. In addition, the results are maintained after multiple adjustments and analyses in countries with ethnic, cultural, and socioeconomic diversity, confirming that muscle status is an independent risk factor for cardiometabolic and global morbidity and mortality. So if we dive into why the muscles are protective, having more muscle is protective, muscle itself is a primary determinant of the health-disease relationship, and it plays an active role in the pathophysiology of cardiometabolic diseases independent of other risk factors. So this is an interesting statement because our society is very focused on nutrition, right? Everyone says, well, just tell me what to eat so I can be healthy, or tell me what supplement to take. But actually a lot of the studies on nutrition are epidemiologic. So they're based on just looking at a group of people and drawing associations from that. So, hey, this age group of people in this state have less cancer, and those people also seem to eat more mushrooms. So that study would say, eating more mushrooms decreases X cancer based on this study of this group. And that's an association. That's not a causal link. Whereas studies on physical activity and muscle can draw stronger links, primary determinant of health relationship versus an association, right? So whereas we all are very prone to say, well, tell me what to eat, nutrition's the number one thing, there's actually a stronger body of evidence suggesting that exercise and physical activity is the primary determinant of health, even above nutrition. So given that the relationship between muscle and disability and death is independent of the level of physical activity, the 3 aspects that mediate the protective role of muscles are your muscle mass, its composition in terms of fiber types, and its function as an endocrine organ. So muscles represent 35 to 40% of body weight in a healthy adult, and they have different fibers. Muscle mass can explain 20 to 30% of total oxygen consumption at rest, and so therefore plays a big role in body metabolism. Differences in muscle metabolism can explain up to 50% of the variability in energy expenditure between individuals. So, why does this person have a better metabolism than me? Well, maybe that person has better muscle mass than I do, and so their muscle is burning more than my muscle is. Total muscle energy expenditure is modifiable because both muscle mass and composition are modifiable. So there you go. If you say, well, I've always been puny and I'm a hard gainer. Well, that's fine. You might never win a bodybuilding competition, but you can always add more muscle mass, and you can impact which fibers are dominant. Are they like the fast twitch fibers, the power fibers, or are they the more aerobic fibers, the long, slow distance type stuff? Muscle is the main carbohydrate store in the body, both in response to insulin and contractile activity. So after meals, muscle can capture up to 70% of ingested sugar. So that's important because if someone has insulin resistance, muscle can pull sugar out of the blood independent of insulin production. So muscles can clear your blood of sugar using receptors that don't rely on insulin. And so again, if someone is type 1 diabetic and they can't even make insulin, well, weight training and building muscle would be a good idea for them, because the muscle can help them regulate their blood glucose and need as small a dose of prescription insulin as possible. In adults, insulin sensitivity and elasticity of arteries are positively associated with type 1 fibers of muscle. These results suggest a relationship between muscle fiber type, obesity, insulin resistance, and vascular function. In summary, the reservoir capacity of muscle, which depends on the amount of muscle and its composition, regulates whole body blood sugar and cholesterol metabolism, substrate oxidation, so inflammation, and body energy expenditure or metabolism. Thus, increased muscle mass with a phenotype with more oxidative fibers is metabolically and cardiovascularly healthier. So that's where we'll stop and looking at this paper. There's many more pages. We're only about a quarter of the way through, but I want to confine it to the muscle status and grip strength topic today. And so let's open this up to questions. Here are the normative values. So if we look, let me get my pen here. So if you look at table 2 here, this is reference values of grip strength for different regions in the world. So we can see South America, men and women, Europe, North America, Middle East, China. So if you are a 40 to 49-year-old female, say, you want to, and you do the hand dynamometer at your doctor's office, you want to hit a 30, which would put you in the middle quartile range for your age. So you can see the first value corresponds to the 25th percentile. So the 25 would be the lowest percentile. 34 would be in the 75th percentile. So 30 would put you at like the 50th percentile. So, that would put you at average. If that same 40 to 49-year-old female hits 37, she's up in the 80, 90th percentile. She's got great grip strength. That's awesome. So you can look at this and say, what age group do I fall in? Am I male or female, and what number did I hit? And so if that 40 to 49-year-old female squeezes the dynamometer and hits a 23, she's not doing well. She's below the 25th percentile, which, she's now 4 times more at risk for poor cardiovascular outcome, or whatever, all-cause mortality or morbidity that we're talking about. So in that instance, that's bad feedback, that's the outcome. Okay. And it may scare the person, but it's also, okay, here, this is where you are right now. So channel that fear towards activity to improve the outcome, instead of being scared and not doing anything, be motivated to go, work grip strength, work overall muscle status.
I have one other just thing I heard is that another way, there's no scientific basis for this, it's just something I read, that another way to check your health status is to sit on the floor and get up without using hands. And every time you touch the floor. If it's just one hand, that's better than two hands, or you have
Yeah.
to get on all fours. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
That you can go
That's
ahead.
that. Yeah. That study was done in South America. And yeah, you're right. So basically you sit Indian style. And so they did this to me at a seminar. I went to it was actually a kinesiotape seminar, and they had us sit down Indian style, and they said, stand up without touching the floor, and without posting is the nerd scientific term, but basically without putting your hand down or on your knee or floor or whatever. And again, you get demerits for every time you have to touch. And the study um, on South Americans showed that, yeah, the more posts or the more times you have to touch, the less fit you are, the higher the risk of death. And I think probably most of that is to do with the muscle and the strength, right? Because it takes strength to stand up. You have to have some coordination and balance too, but you have to stand yourself up off the floor from that position.
Yeah, I test it sometimes, and I can still do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's always stuck with me, and I just, if I happen to find myself on the floor, I'll try it, and
Yeah.
I can still do it sometimes. So
It's funny if you have kids or grandkids, it's like what they do it without even thinking, right? But then we sit down. For us, it's a test. For them, it's just normal. So so no, that's a good addition, Sue, because if you're not somewhere um, or your doctor doesn't have a dynamometer, it's like, well, how do we test it? Again, you can dead hang from the pull-up bar. You can do that ground to standing test and try not to touch. You could do the sit to stand test using a chair. That's done often in the elderly. You could do the walking speed test. There's a bunch of different ones.
I have a comment.
Uh-huh.
Another measure that I read from Dr. Let's see, what was his name? It was in Men's Health. Peter, I don't know, it's
Atia.
ATTIA.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So his was dead hang as well, but the other one, which there's no way I can do that, is the suitcase or farmer carry, where you are holding a dumbbell in each that is half your body weight
Mm-hmm.
for a minute.
Yeah.
So if you're 100 pounds, that means you have to hold 50 pounds in each
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. I think I'd rather do a hang.
Dead hang, yeah. Yeah. So you start where you're at, and actually what I would say is do both, and see how you do. Because even if you can't do the 50s, well then there's your answer. So then start with 25s in each hand. And once you hit a minute there, now see if you work up to 35s, and you could build up to 50s, right? And then the goal is still, you can still set the goal to eventually do the 50. And when you achieve the 50, you can say, hey, hey, look what I did. And now
Right.
I'm where I should be or better, right? So because and then do the dead hang test too, because hey, who knows? I I may be in a situation where I'm hanging and need to pull myself up out of there. You might have to carry a friend or a dog, right? So it's like we want to be cross trained in our grip strength too, just like we want to be cross trained in our fitness. So as many of the tests as you can pass, the better.
Right.
Just like as many of the blood markers that are optimal, the better.
So just quickly, the dead hang, especially for people that have shoulder issues,
Mm-hmm.
is it the same as, I mean, the dead hang is your arms are straight
Yep.
down.
Yeah. You're not doing a pull up. You're grabbing and you're hanging and your feet aren't touching anything. And so you're
Can
trying.
you have your arms bent instead of the hang? Does that count?
Sure. I mean,
Okay.
that would be harder because you're recruiting more muscles for that minute, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. And then here's a couple other options. So the sit to stand test are called the chair test here. Um, it consists of measuring the time required for the patient to stand and sit 5 times without using the support of their hands or arms. So it's kind of a modification of the test Sue was talking about from the floor. The results depend on age and sex and are correlated with strength of the legs. The average time increased from 6 to 14 seconds between 30 years old and 90 years old, right? So a 30-year-old should be able to sit to stand in the chair 5 times in 6 seconds or less without using their hands. A 90-year-old should be able to do 5 times in 14 seconds. And then, 40 to 80 would be split up in there. And then gait speed or walking speed is another one. So you do that, you do 12 feet or 4 meters, and you should be able to walk more than 1 meter per second. So that would take you 4 seconds or less, would be a passing score. If it takes them more than 4 seconds to walk 4 meters, their walking speed's too slow. So that's an increased risk. So there's a bunch of these different tests, and you can do them, do all of them, do the dead hang, the walking, the sit to stand, the dumbbell. And if you pass all of them, then great. Don't worry about it. Keep training the way you're training. If you fail any of them, then work on that one.